Hello and welcome to ETS Live, the European Tech Show, where we're going to be bringing you the top stories from across Europe every week. We're going to be bringing on the top European builders, founders, investors to talk about the top news stories that's happening across the continent right now. It feels like there's a real shift and change in optimism and ambition across the European continent. And we're here to capture that, talk about it and bring it direct to you. So this is the first episode and we have got an amazing roster of guests. I'm Seb and I'm here with Ronan, who's going to talk a bit about our guests.
Yeah, we've got a stacked guest lineup today, as Seb said. We've got Philip, co-founder of Zilch, coming in. He'll be here in 4 minutes. Philip's going to be talking about how, building Europe's fastest growing unicorn, according to the Financial Times, scaling to 150 million ARR in record time, and Zilch's card release. What's next for Zilch? We've also got James Wise over at Boulderton. James is a venture investor for 15 years. He's a partner at Boulderton Capital. He's going to be joining and talking to us about the state of fundraising right now, London Tech Week, the 996 debate, and also Wise moving over to London for the listing. We have Danai, co-founder and CTO over at Gradient Labs, talking a little bit about Gradient Labs, the problem that they're solving, hitting 1 million ARR in record time, what hiring and building technical teams in Europe looks like. We've also got David over at Asteroid. David is a YC founder, currently building in Europe. He'll be breaking down the alternatives to YC, comparing it to Entrepreneur First and what's next for them. And then coming in at the end, we have Daniel Jones over at Medfin, telling us more about what it's like to operate at the financial layer within the dentistry space and how community can play a role in breaking into a new industry.
And what a week to start. We've got London Tech Week going live right now. We've had Jensen Huang, Eric Schmidt talking about why the UK is an amazing place to build AI and the next kind of generation of tech giants. We've got Mistral talking about rumored to be raising $1 billion. We've had an acquisition of Oxford Ionics by IonQ, a big US quantum computer player. Is that like another case of sort of like incubated Britain being then taken private by a big American player? We've also had some big rounds. Silicon Valhalla is in full swing. Linear's just become a unicorn not long after Legora raised an 80 million huge round, valuing them at 675 million. So there is a lot to get into. Wave has just announced that they're launching their first autonomous vehicles in the UK next year. All of this and more. And we're going to be jumping in and out with different calls with the different founders.
Yeah. So the format will be sort of like a live call-in session. So we'll have 20-minute slots for each guest to come in. The guests will be breaking down what's top of mind for them, what their opinions are on the state of European tech at the moment. And it'll just be 20 minutes each guest, jumping in and out. We'll have to be very strict on the times so we don't get a queue. We also forgot to mention Lovable raising 100 million at a 1.5 billion valuation. It is apparently fake news.
Fake news, not fake news. But either way, it's an indication of how phenomenally well they're performing and the market at the moment. The ambition and the vision is that founders will come on here to talk about their news, their insights, their product releases going forward. So if you're a starter, if you're a founder, an investor with news, let us know, come onto the show, talk about it, because we want to hear it and we want to push it direct to our audience.
Yeah, that is an open invitation. This is a great place for distribution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's amazing that Philip is our first guest. He should be joining any minute. But as Ronan touched on, they are the fastest growing unicorn across Europe, one of the fastest growing fintechs in the UK of all time. They've grown from 0 to 5 million users in 5 years. 1 in 7 UK individuals is a customer of theirs. And he's actually been at London Tech Week all week. He was at Checkers at the weekend with the Prime Minister and Jensen Huang.
I'm looking at that LinkedIn post right now.
Yeah,
Eric Schmidt.
He's been hanging out with all the big dogs in the tech world. It was like a really small group of high profile tech people invested to Checkers.
I realized the photo is in high order from
really?
Jensen. Yeah.
So yeah, he's going to be great. We want to talk about what's going on in London Tech Week, how much of it is sort of nice sound bites and headlines, and how much is going to change across European tech, and what it means for the London AI scene, this new partnership with NVIDIA.
Should be coming in anytime now.
Yes. But yeah, he's an amazing founder, one of the UK's biggest fintech founders, valued at 2 billion, like you said, 150 million of annual revenue run rate, profitable. and they just relaunched their card. They have an interesting model where they decided to not release the card first, but have released it now after 5 years. They've been primarily mobile app focused. So it's going to be great to get in it with him. And also he's talking tomorrow with the LSE CEO, as well as like the Thought Machine founder and the Treasury Minister for Investment. So it's going to be interesting to talk to him about why he's moving, the London capital markets, what it means for Zilch and wider fintech, and what it means for potentially them going public in the next few years.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
there's going to be lots to get in to talk about with him. Hello, welcome, Philip. You're live in the studio with us. I'm Seb, who you can't see.
You can see me now.
Is Ronan over here?
Hey, Philip.
Nice to see you.
You too.
But thank you so much for joining us. Like, it's amazing to have you on here. Our first guest of our first ever episode. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here. Number one.
Yeah, we're thrilled. This is the European Tech Show. Is all about bringing on the best of European founders to talk about what they're building, the state of European tech, the ecosystem, and kind of to share your unique insights on the ecosystem and what you want to see changing. We're all familiar with Zilch, the business model, fastest growing European unicorn, like amazing business model, 5 million users in 5 years. But what we'd like to get into first, because we only have 20 minutes, London Tech Week.
Yep.
You have been all over the shop, meeting all sorts of people, Jensen Huang, Eric Schmidt, Prime Minister, at Checkers, Downing Street garden parties. How's it been? What's the vibe?
Well, it's been quiet, it's been pretty relaxed. So, it is a crazy time of year, but I think this year is significantly higher energy than we've seen in a number of years before it. And there's a bunch of things driving that. I mean, the first is obviously you have a whole lot going on in the US. That is driving a lot of renewed interest in the UK ecosystem. Frankly, we're seeing a lot of investors looking at moving dollars out of the US. That's interesting. People are, for the first time in, since I can remember, talking about holding less dollars. That's interesting. And so, all of that, I think, has created a little bit of a renewed energy and almost given not just the UK, but Europe, probably a sense of the feeling that actually, hang on, this could be a moment in history where, other countries can really start to compete with today, what is the biggest, one of the biggest and largest countries in the world. The US, and obviously hugely innovative and the Valley and all of the good things. This could be that moment in time that allows, for instance, the UK, and we're excited about this from a fintech financial services point of view, the opportunity really to leapfrog some competition in the United States in building our own businesses. So I think everyone feels that energy. And as you say, we kicked off at Checkers on Sunday, which just was an amazing opportunity. And it was a surprise visit from Jensen, who turned up, and we were all in our blazers, and he turned up in his leather jacket. So it was fantastic to see him. Of course, people like Eric Schmidt, just brilliant to have people like that around you, and talking a lot about AI, but not just AI. Of course, the different industries that AI is starting to completely transform. So the energy level really high. It's been a fantastic start to the week, but there's still quite a bit left of the week to go.
Yeah, and tomorrow I think you're on stage talking with the Thought Machine founder, with Poppy, with the LSE CEO. What are you going to be talking about there?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Founders Forum. So Brent and Caroline obviously have done such a great job this week, and their main event is Founders Forum, and it's just such a brilliant event. It brings everyone together. This is the 20th anniversary of the event, and so the people who are going to be there are just unbelievable. And that panel specifically, we're going to be speaking about capital markets, what we're seeing in the UK. And obviously, Paul from Thought Machine, people are looking at them to see when are they going to be listing their business. A lot of people are asking the same question of us. And obviously, we have Julia on the panel from the LSE, who's got a lot to talk about too, in terms of what is the plan, what's going on, how are we going to bring more liquidity to the market, how do we make sure that companies, are born in the UK, grow in the UK, scale in the UK, stay in the UK. A lot of people have sort of questioned, well, do we really mind where these companies list? If they're still operating in the UK, they've still got customers here and they're serving people here, what's the problem? And our view is that there is a problem. If companies leave, there is an inertia that they drag with them to wherever it is that they go. And people don't actually appreciate the knock-on impact that can have. And so we actually think it's a really important topic. And so what we're trying to flesh out on that panel is sort of like, what's the state of the nation? Where is the market at here in the UK? And what can we expect from, especially in fintech, we've got, about over 100 billion of private market cap companies in the UK, just in fintech, all sort of rattling towards what could be potential IPOs. And if we get this right, this could add $1 trillion to the FTSE 100 in the next 4 to 5 years. So obviously that's a huge opportunity for the UK. Government recognizes that. That's why Tech Week's so important. That's why there's so much energy. And you can imagine another $1 trillion turning up on the FTSE 100 in just 4 or so years, how much income tax that generates, how much VAT that generates with all the employees spending that money. And of course, what brilliant services and competition that drives into the market.
No, it'd be monumental. And Zilch is one of those companies that's constantly talked about as like one of the first ones or one of the big ones to IPO. And you're very UK, London, bullish centric. In your mind, what do you think needs to change to sort of open up that market to get companies like yourself IPOing in London?
Really, it's. We think there's a lot of this is around capital. If we think about, and actually at Checkers, we had an interesting discussion about talent as a starting point. And I think Jensen actually reflected this on stage to kick off Tech Week, which is that the UK is spoiled with talent, right? There's a huge amount of really intelligent, smart, brilliant people in the world. And naturally, if you said, well, if you could have a disproportionate amount of those people over the next few years, why wouldn't you take that opportunity? And thankfully, the UK still has 4 of the top 10, schools in the world. If you think about universities, so we're not struggling for talent in the UK. We've got great talent here. So it's a good starting point. There are a few things changing in terms of visa rules, etc., that we really need to think about because that could impact some of that talent. So, but we think we're already in a good spot with talent. Then you've got great startup environment here where you've got EIS, SEIS, lots of funding for startups. That's really interesting. But it's sort of when you get to scale that things start to become more difficult in the UK. And what I mean by that, if we just made this quite short and sweet, is you need access to capital. And if we look at a lot of our peers around us, so companies worth 1, 2, 3, 5 billion that are at that sort of level, hundreds of millions of revenue, etc. When you go out to do funding rounds, what you find typically, and this is a generalization, but typically those term sheets you're receiving are not coming from British funds. And specifically not from pension funds in the UK, that's for sure. And so what that does is it creates a weird dynamic because these companies start to raise more and more capital from, for instance, the US or other regions of the world. And naturally, a lot of these investors want to put someone on the board. And so the whole construct of the board starts to change. And so when these companies start to have a discussion around exit, whether that be sale or specifically listing, naturally the board is more inclined to say, well, what about the US? Because a lot of the board at that point are likely from the US and a lot of the capital that's gone into the business is US capital. So it's just sort of like we shouldn't be surprised that that's the outcome. And so what we really need and what we're advocating strongly for is this pension reform. We need to see far less pension schemes in the UK. We need to consolidate the capital so that you can have real management teams who can actively manage these funds and invest in equities. If you go back 15 years, and that's not too long ago, you had 50% of British pension money was in British stocks. Today, it's less than 5%. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but we need to fix that. So we need to get this capital back into British stocks and making sure that then drives the liquidity of the market. Companies can raise from British funds. They can go on to list this good liquidity on the LSE, for instance, here in the UK. And then specifically think about tax at the back end of that for people who are selling down or exiting partially or fully. How do we have those people reinvest in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So we've got the talent, we're lacking the breakout capital. And I think that's true across the board. We hear a lot from fintech founders who, once they hit Series B, Series C, they struggle to raise the money from European funds, and they always have to look at US investors. I also want to talk about your card release. So you've taken an unusual approach in the fact that you've grown to 5 million users in 5 years, huge revenue, and now you've decided to launch the card. Like, what was the rationale about waiting until now to launch the card? And like, where do you want to take it, I guess?
I think there's probably two answers to that question. So the first is kind of CAC management, right? So what we didn't want to be doing is just printing a bunch of cards and shipping them to people, at a pretty high cost in the beginning of the company. Yeah, it's expensive. So for us, a large part of our model works really well for e-commerce and online. And so it was natural to say, let's rather start with a virtual card. That makes a lot more sense. Customers can use this online. They can also use it instantly. Plus, we don't have the cost of shipping. So when we were just starting out, a lot of this made sense. The other side of that decision was the sort of now incorrect thesis that we had, which was that, we only started in the market 5 years ago. And our view, was that if we looked at the market, my strong feeling was that in 5 to 7 years, there would be no more plastic really in the market because, the UK has always been on the forefront of payment innovation. If you go back to the Olympics, this is when tap and pay contactless really became pervasive through the UK. And Visa and MasterCard did a great job of getting people comfortable with this on the tube, areas where people were used to tapping and paying, and then bringing that obviously more to retail and mass market. And so the UK has really been at the forefront of digital wallet, Apple Pay, Google Pay, tap and pay adoption. And so, the thesis was if we looked out 7 or so years, you'd probably have much less plastic. So why are we bothering issuing old technology today in this business? It's okay. The world will catch up. And I think we were just wrong, right? So what we see today is people still like the trust of that physical instrument in their wallet, even if they're not pulling it out. It creates great brand awareness, which of course is quite useful. But there are a lot of use cases still that you have to use the card. You check into a hotel, they want to take the payment. You're renting the car, they want to insert the card and so on. And so we're just trying to expand wallet share of our customers, frankly, here and make sure we can help them with each and every use case they have, not just the ones we currently serve. And so we've sort of, I think it was two things. One, we were right on, which was cost management on CAC to start. And then the thesis of no plastic, we were just wrong. And, we can admit that. And so we looked at this and said, we probably think if we look another 7 years out from now, there may be far less plastic. But how many use cases do we miss for customers in that period? And we just think the opportunity is too large. So we're going and we're issuing this, of course, very differently to what you found in a traditional physical card, right? This is just a token that identifies who you are, and you control how you want to pay through our app. Pay now, pay later, change your mind, snooze, etc. It's all through the app, but the token at least allows you to go perhaps where today you couldn't.
Yeah, amazing. No, and I think, Zilch is a really unique company in the sense that you've got your consumer flywheel through your app, now through your card. You manage all those B2B relationships where you get the ad spend and I think it's an amazing business model for successfully turning both flywheels, the consumer, taking high intent consumers and turning them into real sales for your B2B partners. I think is amazing. What are you expecting the card to do next? Are you expecting to see a high uptake of your 5 million users use it? Are you going to be rolling it out to everybody? Is it something that you're making immediately available? What's the sort of the rollout plan or strategy with it?
Yeah, so the first thing to point out, which is really interesting, is if we look at our utilization data, we can see that customers today who use our product in store are likely to spend with us, or the utilization is 3 times what the utilization is for a customer who just uses us online. And that probably doesn't sound hugely surprising, I wouldn't think, to most people, but of course, that's really interesting. That's a massive opportunity for us. So if we can go and get our product in the hands of our customer for all of these other use cases, particularly in store or offline, we think we can drive 2 to 3 times the utilization for those customers. And, and this doesn't have any CAC cost to it. There's no growth cost to it besides the technology. So, what a fantastic way for us to be able to grow. And if we think about the business today, we think that means we could probably grow the business by 50 to 60% just with the current base. So massive opportunity ahead of us. So that's like the starting baseline, starting point. And that's without building anything new. It's bringing all of the technology we currently have just to this form factor. The second thing I would say is then on the roadmap for us, we really do think about use cases and how we can add value to those use cases. So, for instance, can we add value to car rental in some form? And obviously, we're a credit business by nature as well. And so I'll give you a good example. And we're looking at things like this, but you go to Greece, you need to rent the car, they take the down payment. You now don't have that cash to spend on the holiday because it's tied up in the down payment for the car. And then you have to wait 2 weeks once you return the vehicle to get the money back. So we could actually create a product that allows you to use Zilch for this. And we could release that cash to you in the meantime so you can enjoy the holiday with that money. And then you can get the money refunded later. These are the types of things we look at to say, how do we uniquely help you in this use case? Using the technology we have, which is that we know we can make ad revenue from the car rental company. We know we could therefore afford to rent you the money for free over the period of your holiday, and you could pay it back when you get home. Okay, that makes sense. That is not just a typical use case. And, here's a normal credit card use case for car rental. It's unique. That will land well with customers. Let's roll that out. So that's the way we think about product development. And then just skipping forward very quickly, why this form factor matters is that we want to be wherever you are. And we think that is going to be more and more important when you think about agentic commerce, the way the world is moving. We've had numerous conversations with the Visa team on their new agentic products, companies like Perplexity or ChatGPT, about where the world is going when you think about payment. And so, for us, really, we want to make sure that we are that payment product that you're using across any form factor. Whether you're telling an agent to shop on your behalf, it'll be using Zilch to make that purchase for you. And so we just need to be wherever you are.
Yeah, amazing. And you've grown exponentially in the last 5 years. And it feels like this is just like another untapped growth lever to really take you to the next level. I'm conscious that we've got like 2 minutes left. Final question. Thank you so much for joining us. What's your top priority for the end of 2025, 2026? What's the one thing that you're looking at or you're focusing on?
I actually just mentioned it there. So agentic commerce is the big focus for us. So we just thinking, and again, we've been wrong with a few things in the past when we try and look forward 10 years and we say, and in this world, by the way, you can't look 10, you need to look 5 years forward and say, how do we think the world looks in 5 years from now? And then the real question to the team is, how does Zilch participate meaningfully in that world? So there's a lot of business as usual, really innovative, interesting stuff on our roadmap, which is build this, launch those new use cases. This is great. But the broader question to our leadership team is, in 5 years from now, this is how we think the world looks. We think payments are invisible and frictionless. We don't think user interfaces exist like they do today. We don't know if you would need those. Why do we all need, with agentic type AI and commerce, why do you need a screen to tap some buttons to order a car to pick you up? Why would you need that? I mean, the only reason you needed the UI is because you didn't have something smart enough to just do it for you. So if we don't have that layer, that UI layer generally, how does Zilch exist in that world? And then let's work backwards from there and make sure that we're building towards that. So agentic commerce for us is certainly what we're focused on.
Amazing. That sounds really cool. But look, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Philip.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you both.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Likewise.
Ciao.
So cool, man. So cool. Fastest growing fintech, fastest growing unicorn. I think the second fastest growing fintech in Europe, fastest growing unicorn across Europe. 5 years to 150 million of revenue. such a cool business.
Yeah, we forgot to drop the Deloitte, one of the fastest growing tech companies in EMEA. They were ranked literally 19 hours ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They hit the top of the rankings on every single ranking. I think Deloitte, Sifted, Financial Times. They're doing it insanely well.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, up next we have Danai from Gradient Labs coming over in 9 minutes.
9 minutes.
Before we jump into that, I mean, I've just pulled up the Lovable article on Bloomberg. Just to read out the title: Swedish vibe coding startup Lovable in talks for 1.5 billion valuation. They're riffing off here. The Swedish startup has held discussions with US investors to raise at least 100 million at a valuation of 1.5 billion or higher. I can't remember what their last. Is this going to be a B or?
I don't know. I think the last one was a Series A, but I think it was a public valuation.
Yeah, it was A, and it was like 17 million, I think.
It was like Creandum, I think, led the round.
Yeah.
And there was like a story about the Creandum partner waiting outside the offices in Stockholm in the snow for like 7 hours to win the deal.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, I mean, I posted about it on LinkedIn yesterday. Harry Stebbings chimed in and said it was fake news. And not only did he say it was fake news, but he also said if that was the case, it would be very cheap. Which I think is super interesting because I think they've recently hit 61 million ARR.
Yeah.
So 1.5 billion on 61.
Yeah. There was an amazing post. So Siavash, who is the ex-VP of engineering at Shopify, who was one of the advisors on the board of Convergence. He's also an angel investor in Lovable.
Yeah.
He had a LinkedIn post up, I think about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, where he was essentially looking at their user graph, and it was just like straight hockey stick, like vertical line up. But he was on the phone with Anton apparently, and he's explaining on his LinkedIn post, and he's saying that he's like, this is a really cool graph. Just give me a call back when these are paid users. And he was like, dude, those are the paid users. Like they're not the free users.
Mad.
And then it's just insane.
A lot of people have been talking about the robustness of like that sort of like consumer revenue and how much ARR is still ARR in the sense that is it annual and is it recurring if you get a user who signs up for 3 months. And a lot of people are saying, it's not that robust. It's not that, it's not real annual and recurring.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing more and more use cases where people have shared with me dashboards or products for me to talk about. And they are big B2B tech businesses and they are showing me like the demo pre-launch and it's hosted on Lovable.
Wow.
And then I saw one last week where someone shared with me a big dashboard and it was, it's hosted on Lovable. But as soon as it goes live, the domain changes and it's a custom domain and you'd have no idea that it's Lovable.
Wow.
So I think this is like an amazing example of the consumer takes off. But like for me in my product role, like I use Lovable because it's an amazing way of like actually mocking up things and showing clients, showing users.
Yeah. I was speaking with a founder the other day and he was telling me, we were talking about Liverpool, talking about the round. And, he said his CTO hates him now because he'll just sort of like ping him at 3 a.m, like, hey, I've just vibe coded this dashboard. Like, can we implement it?
Can we do it?
Which is interesting, right? Because I think that a lot of people, you look at Lovable and you think that I think one of the main selling points is it's bridging the gap from like, I'm me as an individual, I'm an ideas guy, right? Like I'm like, now the ideas guy can kind of have a pop at maybe doing something technical. I think the bridge isn't fully it's fully solved yet, but it's giving people who aren't super technical like not a seat at the table, but like an ability to say like to their co-founders or their CTOs like, hey, like this is what I have in mind. Like I know this looks dreadful and looks pretty bad, and I've done it in 3 a.m. in 15 minutes, but this is kind of what I'm looking for. Can you build it?
Oh, it's amazing for that. And like as someone who works in product, before you might knock something up in Figma and have a look at it and be like, this is sort of the thing that I want to build. This can you imagine the functionality? Now I'll just go straight to Lovable and I'll talk about it and I'll write like, I want these functionality points. And it doesn't need to be in the branding of the business. It doesn't need to look good. I just need to be able to walk the engineers through this functionality and these features.
Yeah.
And you can knock that up in Lovable in like half an hour as opposed to doing something in Figma that would take like half a day or a day.
Yeah.
So I think the B2B use case is going to be absolutely massive. But I think it'll be interesting that like Harry Stebbings is saying 1.5 billion is cheap. Because, based on their revenue and their growth, they're looking at like a 30x revenue multiple, which for AI, that is pretty low. I think Perplexity's looking to raise a 100x. I think they're looking to raise that. They've just hit 100 million, and obviously they're a different model completely, but they're looking to raise it over 100x. the Mistral looking to raise $1 billion.
Yeah.
They've already raised $1 billion. Their last valuation was $6 billion, and they're looking to hit 100 million of revenue this year.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 100 million revenue business raising probably over a 10 billion valuation. So that multiple is much bigger.
I mean, as we're just talking about this, I'm just looking at Anton's LinkedIn. I think every single time he posts, it's just some crazy, insane stat.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this now. Lovable Built app just made 3 million in 48 hours. Probably the most successful Lovable app so far. The team behind it was already the largest edtech company in Brazil with 500k paying users. They used Lovable to build a premium version of their education platform in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2,000 likes. That's aura.
And I saw the CEO of Bubble was posting on LinkedIn, because Bubble is the old style, build an app in no time at all.
Yeah, I think I've messed around with that before.
He posted talking about how the site visits to Lovable,
I saw that,
are much, much higher than the site visits to Lovable domains.
Yeah.
And the CEO, Anton, got involved and was like, that's because 19 of our 20 biggest sites are all under custom domains that you'd have no idea.
Yeah. I love that, founders doing PR and customer service on Twitter.
And trying to fight your competitor. I feel like it's always a really bad sign when you're trying to trash your competitor. They must be nervous. And especially, I think it goes back to the point that you don't know what's on Lovable and what's not. Right? If 19 of the 20 biggest Lovable sites are on custom domains, you have no idea what sites you're visiting that are built on Lovable, what B2B businesses are using it, because they wouldn't talk about it, right? They're not going to talk about or be public about the fact that they're building on Lovable.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just thinking now if there's been websites I've not even realized. I think the Project Europe website was on Lovable. And I didn't realize that until someone, I think it must have been Harry that tweeted out, we did this on Lovable.
Yeah. Because, I think he's an investor, but most people wouldn't talk about it, right? In the same way that you wouldn't have known it was built on one of those landing page websites, or an app was built on Bubble before.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't know that it's being used in the background.
Yeah. There's a line here. They say, Anton's written, in May, Osico wrote on LinkedIn that Lovable surpassed 50 million in annual recurring revenue roughly 6 months after launching its first product. The company's annual recurring revenue is now 61 million, he said in an interview. But this comes back to what you said earlier, right? These MRR metrics, especially in these I saw someone calling it a consumer hype AI metric, in which they're just extrapolating out MRR. They haven't been around for a year and extrapolating out MRR. Is that?
Yeah, well, you just don't know.
Is that okay though? Because when does it stop? I could sell a product in a day and then extrapolate the money I made in one day.
Yeah.
And then is that my ARR?
Yeah. But I think the opportunity is so big and the market is so huge that it probably doesn't matter too much. And especially as if they do try and transition from consumer to B2B, and they try and get more B2B user cases, because I think the biggest opportunity is putting tools like this in the hands of every single engineer, product manager in the business, to enable them to move fast, to ship quicker, execute at an unparalleled rate to anything that people have moved at before.
Yeah. We have Danai coming in.
We have Danai.
T-1 minute.
She's coming in any minute. She is co-founder and chief scientist at Gradient Labs. Gradient Labs is a London-based AI agent startup focusing on customer service and finance and fintech.
How big is the team? Team is
small, I think.
19.
But they are ex-Monzo founding team. They are working with some of the biggest and most exciting fintechs already. I think they hit 1 million ARR after 4 months of launching their products.
Wow.
They immediately signed some huge clients in the space, Yonder, Penfold, a range of other big UK fintechs that you know about.
Yeah.
I think she's an ex-machine learning engineer at Monzo. I think the founding team spent 6 or 7 years there. So they've kind of gone through that UK fintech ecosystem flywheel. They're kind of left to come out. Yeah, exactly. They raised their round from Local Globe, obviously one of the preeminent UK European VCs. They also got Tom Blomfeld, the founder of Monzo, as an angel investor.
Oh wow!
So they're doing amazingly well. And she is co-founder and chief scientist, so she is the technical co-founder. So it's going to be super interesting to talk to her about scaling, hiring, building technical talents across Europe. What does that look like? How easy is it to find and recruit the best technical talent? And also hitting 1 million in record time. What does that mean for the business? What does that mean for the technicals of the team?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to get in it with her.
Seems she's trying to get in now.
Is she
All good on email, all good on calendar.
I think she's joining right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hello. Good, thank you. Nice to meet you. Danai, how are you doing?
I'm gonna think. Let me turn off my doorbell. Sorry, it just ran.
Look at that timing. Let me turn off my doorbell.
Sorry about that.
Not at all.
good.
Welcome. Myself and Ronan.
Yeah, we have to nudge it over. Hello.
You won't be able to see him, but he is here.
I am here. I'm lurking in the
I
back.
believe you.
You know, he'll be chiming in from the back. But we can see you, and it'll look different when it all comes out. But thank you for joining us. It's like amazing to have you here. You are our second guest on the first ever episode of the European Tech Show Live, and we're very excited to have you here. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
We just gave an introduction to yourself and Gradient Labs, how successful Gradient Labs has been. We talked about what you're building, the AI agent software, customer service specifically for fintech or finance more broadly. We talked about some of your incredibly high profile customers and clients across the UK fintech ecosystem. We talked about Yonder, Penfold, Zego, and a huge insurtech. So look, I'd love to hear, how's your journey been from leaving Monzo to building this, an incredibly technical product in the AI space?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for the kind intro as well. So a little bit of background on us, in case, it will be interesting. So all three co-founders are ex-Monzo. So we spent a really long time at Monzo when it didn't have over 12 million customers. It was, a niche fintech in the UK. And we joined early on and we're shipping ML systems there. And funnily enough, one of the first things that we worked on was shipping. My cat likes to do a quick intro to himself. One of the first things that we worked on when I joined Monzo was shipping or improving help search. So you'd go to the help tab and you'd type a query and you get relevant help articles. And that was back in 2018, I think, when transformer architectures were like the hot stuff that everyone was using. LLMs were not a thing at that point. And that's what we started working on. And then obviously we were at Monzo for a really long time, shipped a lot of systems in financial crime as well, and a lot of products that use ML systems in financial crime. But one thing that was a common denominator, no matter what we built inside Monzo, was that human decision-making and reasoning across the company and across experiences that people have had, support agents that have had throughout their tenure is quite critical at being a really successful support agent. And then GPT 3.5 came and we realized that actually there's a start of a very important wave. It's going to be a very critical inflection point on how people work, how people live. And that's when we decided that, we can take all of our experiences at Monzo and use them to build safe and reliable AI operators in a very heavily regulated and heavy stakes industry like financial support.
And how long were you building it before you went live with the product?
Oh, that's a good question. So that also kind of will give you a bit of insight on us as a team. So we are very obsessive with quality. So we're very happy inside the company to just say, good enough isn't. Like you can't just, when you're dealing with finances of people. So when somebody's getting in touch with their bank and they're saying, I have this problem with my finances, it's not just kind of like a best effort support that you can offer. It's just not good enough. So actually, what we did is we built a version of the product within a few months of leaving Monzo. And then we tried to use it ourselves. So we scraped, for example, Monzo's help articles. And then I was using it to figure out my ATM limits or whatever. I was like, this is really annoying me. I just cannot deal with this. And I hated chatbots and I still hate chatbots, the old school stuff. So we built a version of the product and we're like, well, yeah, okay, this is not it. So we scrapped it and we started again. So we were building for, all versions, we were building for about, I want to say a year. And kind of iterating and then testing it on ourselves and fixing what we dislike. So yeah, it was an iterative process. It wasn't kind of just ship the best effort thing, but that's because we're obsessed with, not good enough stuff.
Yeah, amazing. And I read that you hit like $1 million of ARR within months of launching, which is just like phenomenal. But how does that impact the sort of like the technical architecture that you've built? Does that have implications for you when you're looking at scaling? Is there a risk of things like cracking and breaking, or does it not really matter in your space?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. So cracking and breaking and scaling, I think, is something that people that are building with LLMs are, or vibe coding with LLMs, as you know, is the common term. They're hitting now. Once you build something and it looks good enough in the beginning, and you ship it, like, oh, wait a second, there's all these edge cases that I have not thought about and are now failing. So in our case, because we were obsessed with this kind of good enough mentality from the beginning, we very heavily focused on having a really good evaluation system. So the way we think of our agent is kind of the same way you would think of a human brain. As a human, you have a bunch of individual skills that you know how to do. So you know how to pick up the glass of water, and that is a skill that you have, right? Like you can, the weight of the glass, and you can drink water from it. So it's not just kind of like one agent where you just throw stuff in and then stuff comes out. Our agent has a lot of individual unique skills that are all evaluated, both individually, but also in combination with each other. So you do kind of like an end-to-end integration test. So very early enough, we focused on tooling for evaluations, building really clean human-based label data sets that we can reuse. And then we have that even going forward. So every conversation that our agent participates in, we actually run our own evaluations off the back of the conversation, whether it gets handed off or it gets resolved. And then we find flaws in its decision-making or thinking under the hood to then iterate on. That's been a very key driver on our product. But the other thing that you mentioned, sorry to interrupt. One thing that you mentioned is like, how hitting $1 million ARR is impressive. I'm using your words, but I felt quite uncomfortable saying that. But I think the reason why it happened from like going live with a product and giving it to customers and then growing in terms of revenue is because like it resonates with people. Like our bar isn't just beat the workflows and the chatbots out there that just irritate the heck out of you. That's not the bar. That's not what we should be aiming for here. When you have such strong technology, what you should be aiming for is something that performs as good as your humans. And that's what our customers see, and that's what resonates with them.
Sorry, on that, I'm just looking at your website at the moment, and it's clear you're kind of putting your money where your mouth is, because the tagline at the top of the website, if you know what I'm going to say, says, AI customer service that works will outperform your provider or pay you 10K.
Yeah.
And I saw a LinkedIn post from the CEO of Zego, one of your customers, who talked about implementing your agent and how I think like customer support satisfaction went from 60% to almost 80%. And the best performing member of their customer service team was your AI agent, which is just insane, right? The AI agent is now performing at a level that is better than all the humans in the team. And for him to come out and publicly be like, this has been transformative for our business, is like real validation of the product that you're building, which is really cool.
And there's a reason for that, right? So like I mentioned our obsession with evaluations, but there's also kind of the secret sauce here is we focus on learning from humans. Humans are really good at support. They've been doing it for a really long time. So it's not about reinventing the wheel from scratch. Our agent watches how humans solve problems. It builds kind of a knowledge graph of how this company works. It learns how they tackle complicated situations where customers are upset and may want to raise a complaint. It learns their tone of voice. So the reason this agent performs well is because it learns from the best humans, and it learns how to handle tricky situations based on how humans have done it. So essentially, if you have multiple individual people or AI agents solving a problem, you have an error rate for every single person. Now you have this one AI agent that is actually aggregating across n humans and eliminating this like random noise or random error that you'd get from individual people. And that's why it performs well. It just learns from humans. So humans are critical here, by the way. I'm not one of those like, let's just eliminate all humans and ship AI agents kind of person.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear what you think about Klarna, right? Because Klarna took an approach of saying our customer support is going to be like 100% AI agent. We don't need people. And then the Klarna CEO took a step back and was like, actually, we do need some people. And they ended up bringing, I think, I can't remember what it was, but I think they removed something like 700 or 800 roles. And then they turned around and said, we're going to need at least 100 or 150 human roles. Is that how you're envisaging your product to work, like alongside humans?
Yeah, definitely. I think humans are critical in providing you with a feedback loop of, there's situations where our agent just doesn't know how to handle, and it will hand it off to humans, and then it will learn from how the humans do it. So you'll always need this feedback loop to fill in gaps that the agent will have. But also, interestingly enough, I think right now support automation is in no way a solved problem. So obviously, LLMs and support feel like a perfect combination, and it seems obvious that you use LLMs for customer support. But like Klarna, you will not find many companies that will say, yeah, we hired an AI agent to our support and we've now let go X% of our employees. And that's because right now, most AI agents will resolve like 50, 60, 70% of the easiest conversations. So actually, the human time doesn't shift that much in the distribution. You still need humans to do the hardest stuff. And that's what we're focusing on and I'm not surprised that Klarna did that, because there is not many companies that, have proved that they can solve the long tail of really complicated stuff where humans spend a long time on.
Yeah, the time-consuming, complex customer queries.
Exactly.
Just to go on to that as well, that's interesting. Like, and how the future of this, I know that this sort of like human supervision element is super common in basically any like agentic tools that we're seeing on the market at the moment. We saw what happened recently with Builder AI, that I guess the whole thing was just all humans. Where, like right now, you said it's like 60 to 70% of cases are getting solved by AI or moving on to a human. What do you think the future looks like? Will we get to a point where it is just 100% agentic, or?
That's a really good question. I think we see kind of an inflection point at about 85% resolution where, after 85% from our experience, the distribution then becomes like a really long tail of niche individual stuff, or like one-off cases, or kind of really custom unique scenarios where, the agent may not have enough knowledge or experience on how to solve those problems. And especially in financial institutions, at that, that long tail where it's unique and different, we just want to do a best effort attempt at using previous kind of similar experiences to solve that problem. Like if it's unique enough, you're dealing with people finances, you need to use a human to help you there. So I do think there's an inflection point at like 85 to 90%. And then the last kind of 10%, you have a human that can teach you and you learn from. And interestingly, I think there's also so obviously we're talking about frontline support mainly here, but there's also kind of the back office operations. And by that, I mean stuff like financial crime investigations, financial difficulties investigations, complaints, vulnerability. There's all these problems that are inherently very human intuition and human experience based, and potentially require a lot of kind of human emotion as part of decision making. And that's also kind of a sector where I find it very hard to believe that we would eliminate humans, because inherently, if you're investigating a case of vulnerability, somebody's lost their home, cannot pay their mortgage or loan back, an AI agent will not directly have the experience or know how that feels to handle that case appropriately. So it needs a human to learn from on how to handle those things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of the things we want to talk about was talent in Europe. Jensen Huang was talking about the density of AI talent in the UK specifically right now. How have you found it building out your technical team, which I guess is it solely in London? Do you have people working across remote places? It would just be amazing to get your insights on building a very high performing technical team in an AI product.
Yeah, for sure. So all of our team are UK based. Most of them are London based in particular. And I think because we are still an early stage startups, we're about 20, 25 people. Most of the folks are from our network. That's kind of, I think in the beginning, hiring from your network is really key. And that's kind of what we've leaned on. Interestingly, I really agree. I think the UK and Europe in general has really high density talent. If you just list the universities that exist, that produce top research, the list is very long. Interestingly, though, I think it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or kind of a chicken and egg problem, where in startups is not just about being really technical. It's also about being able to have really good first principles thinking and kind of worrying about the techniques and the product at the same level. And I think if you just come out of academia, for example, you may have this obsession with research, but not necessarily the product thinking. So you need to have a bit of both. And interestingly, I think if you are in the US, there are so many startups and scale-ups that you can join, and you build both of those muscles and the first principle thinking in that situation very easily. And I think that's what creates this very large pool of candidates for startups and scale-ups, is because, there are a lot of people just kind of exercising that muscle of first principles thinking in that environment. I think in Europe, naturally, it's kind of this cycle of you don't have as many people or as many startups, and you kind of go in this like vicious circle where less talent because less startups, but then less startups because of less talent, if that makes sense.
So when you look to the future as you scale up, you hire more people, are you looking for that blend of, let's say, academia in machine learning, maybe a machine learning degree or computer science, combined with some experience in like an early stage startup or a scale up? Is that what you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, I think that is quite key for us. I'm not the type of person that kind of like creates filters in that way. I think Europeans are very European. I got this feedback from VC where we're very factual and we're very nonchalant about our achievements. We're like, yeah, I've done X, Y, Z. And that's why I found when you're hiring in the UK and Europe, like just buying a coffee for someone and just getting them to talk about how they solve problems is a much stronger signal than just kind of saying, oh yeah, they've worked for 2 years at a startup and they went to Oxford, for example. So obviously you need some kind of criteria to filter out a good portion of candidates. But then after that, working at a scale-up or startup and then buying those people a coffee and see how they solve problems, I think that is the most important key there.
Yeah, amazing. Makes sense.
I was going to ask, just going back to the research element of things, that obviously you'll have like part of the AI, the ML team will be working on products, part of the team will be working on research, as you said. When VCs come to look, let's say you go on to raise another round after this, like how much attention do they give to the research side? Like, because obviously they want to look at like the ARR multiple, but I'm guessing that the research team isn't as focused on, how do we build a product here and like, increase the top line. They're much more research focused. Like, do they hold, can you wow them with the research team as well as wowing them with the ARR metrics?
I think our obsession with research is in combination with the product. Because we're again at a very early stage, we are not at the stage where you can just have a team of people go off and do kind of moonshot research projects. Everything that we try is will have to tie back to the product, and it will have to tie back into features that will benefit our customers and the quality of the AI agent. We have this mentality of you just need to drive at the wall very fast if you're doing research and see that the path may fail, and then you need to move on. So I think VCs don't look necessarily at like, okay, who is in your research team and where did they study and what do they do? They're more interested in how are you using that talent for features and products? How is this going to increase your market penetration? And how is this going to give you a key differentiator as a product? They're more interested in that from experience rather than kind of, what research do you folks do, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
1 minute left. Final question. What's your top priority for the rest of the year?
Oh, top priority. We kind of touched on it already, right? The support is a non-solved problem. You still have this to actually make a meaningful business impact on our customers. We need to solve the longer tail of problems. So we're focusing a lot on that of how do you solve this very complex organizational problem where even companies themselves don't know how to solve. The solution right now is just hire more humans and throw them at the problem. And obviously, that is what we're trying to solve. But then the other focus is learning this inherent decision-making or gut feel, intuition decision-making that humans have in the back office operations like financial crime. If you ask a human to tell you how they investigate money laundering, they can't. They don't know how. It's just experience. So we're building agents that learn to infer or distill this knowledge into something that an AI agent can follow.
Amazing. And I think Gradient Labs is one of the most exciting AI startups in London at the moment. It's tapping into the ecosystem. It's tapping into the AI agent movement. It's like a perfect time in the perfect place to be building what you're building. And you've seen that in the traction. So we're going to be watching closely. And if you ever want to come back on to announce news or anything like that, just let us know, because we're super excited about what you're building. So Renee, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah, gotta have you back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye.
Awesome. Wow. That sounds like they're absolutely killing it.
Yeah, I mean, absolute insane growth. Very technical team, ex-Monzo, million in like 4 months. I think they're going to be another sort of like Fixer AI where, you know, 1 million in 4 months, but maybe like 5 million in 7 months, 10 million in a year. They're just, I think there's so many of their potential clients in London. Like they're targeting financial services, fintechs. There's such a huge market.
Yeah.
The opportunity is massive.
Yeah, those growth rates are just crazy. I remember when I was at Pigment, like a French tech business planning platform, basically. I think they did like something like 15 million or 20 million ARR in like the first 3 years. And it was insane at the time. That was only like 4 years ago. Yeah. Like, and I'll just get blown out the water now. Also pulling up that AI, that so funny, the AI customer service that works will outperform your provider or pay you 10K. I've never seen, that's just like
that's so
the most
aggressive.
gangster.
It's just like, that's when you know your product, when you've complete faith in your product.
Yeah. That's insane. I wonder if that's how they got some of their customers as well. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the names they have here: Yonder, Plum, Sling Money, Zigo, Rain, Lendable.
Yeah, and I think being ex-Monzo probably gives them such an advantage for like having built products in Monzo that help solve this problem. Being able to take that and pitch that to the clients that they want to sell to is probably massively valuable. And I imagine, you know, they've got Tom Blomfeld as an angel. They probably have a bunch of other fintech angels that can connect them. Local Globe has invested in a huge range of early fintechs in London. They're probably benefiting from like the ecosystem and network effects here in London of such a vibrant fintech community.
Yeah. Up next, 2 minutes, we've got James Wise, partner at Boulderton. Really excited for this one. We're going to dig into some really cool stuff. I really want to get into the 996 debate with him as well.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that. That's been popping off. Started with Harry Stebbings posting about how 996 is a standard. It's what everyone is doing in San Francisco at the moment. And then,
I think
Saranga.
I have the exact tweet, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just getting it up now.
And then, Saranga, one of James's colleagues, came out and was like, well, you know, being an entrepreneur, he's like, you know, sometimes it's intense, sometimes it's not. You've got to manage and navigate burnout and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So Harry's tweet was, what European founders need to realize: the valley has turned up the intensity once again. 7 days a week is the required velocity to win right now. There is no room for slip up. You aren't competing against random companies in Germany, etc., but the best in the world. And I got 44K views. I mean, people are saying that went viral. Like, it's 44K.
Wouldn't want to be a random startup in Germany right now. Like, that's your, that's
taking the smoke.
Yeah.
Taking the smoke head on.
But James, I think he's been in venture for 15 years. Here he is. Hello, James.
Is he here already?
Hello.
We've got him in the studio.
No other.
Amazing. Right, give us 2 seconds. We're going to start recording.
I'm hiding behind Seb James. I'm over here.
We're live in the studio. We've got Ronan over here, so you're not going to be able to see him, but he will be there. So if you hear the voice, that's his voice.
Yeah, you'll just randomly hear me come in at some point.
As long as you're not like pulling faces while I can't see. Important there. And I'll hear that, Ronan, just so you know.
I'm sure you'll catch up with it.
Yeah. James, thank you so much for joining us. This is our first ever episode. We've just had on Philip, the founder of Zilch. We've had Danai, the founder of Gradient Labs. You're our third guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, James.
We launched this as it happened in London Tech Week. We were talking to Philip about it. Would love to get your views. Like, what have you been up to? Who have you been speaking to? What's the kind of vibe or atmosphere at the moment?
Yeah, it's a bit like Eurovision for tech and venture people, isn't it? There's a lot going on. It's very international. A combination of serious and drinks everywhere. So it's great. There's a lot of really positive movement, both from a sort of an ecosystem level and also a policy level. So, you know, I was over at Checkers on Sunday, helped one of the self-driving cars get their wave, which we parked on the lawn of Checkers in this amazing future of Britain, past of Britain kind of vision. Prime Minister was there, the Chancellor was there, but also Jensen Huang flew in for that meeting. Brian Schiff, one of the founders of Anduril, flew in for the meeting. We had really senior people from Google, Microsoft, and other governments. And so the ability of the UK to convene and bring all those people together is exceptional still, right? That is world leading. There are like only 3 or 4 nations in the world that can do that kind of thing. So it's great that we're still able to do it and get exposure and engagement from that level of sort of founders as well as institutions. And then there's a lot of positive policy announcements, some of which has come out already. The sort of movement on self-driving vehicles being one of them, expansion of visas, increased public support for tech and adoption, and more to come. So all of that creates a great baseline, but obviously, a lot of it's headlines and promises, and we need to see some delivery. So that's what comes in the hard weeks following London Tech Week. I'm about to go off to Founders Forum, actually. So that's up in Soho Farmhouse. So that's my next stop.
Yeah, amazing. How bullish are you on the next stage, on the execution? They're not just the headlines and the, bringing, the big guests out. Do you think this is going to spark change?
Yeah, I'm incredibly bullish. Right? I'm long early stage technology entrepreneurs. That's my job. And venture is an amazing asset class where, you get to make 2 decisions, when to invest and when to exit. And in the middle, you're just there trying to help people grow. And to do that kind of job, you really have to be bullish. So I'm naturally optimistic. I'm naturally bullish. And I'm really strongly optimistic about European founders. I think one of the things that the general conversation that's going on at the moment in the press and everything about the UK, is it a good place or bad place? That's actually a secondary question for me. The biggest thing is, can great founders build global winners starting off in Europe? And the answer is definitely yes. And obvious, right? We've got loads of data around that. The secondary question is, what benefit is that to the UK if they have to move early, if they can't list here, if they can't raise money here, if regulations prevent them from growing? That's a secondary question. And I still have lots of question marks and challenges there. In terms of, do we have a phenomenal base of entrepreneurs and founders and companies which are going to create global category leaders wherever they end up in the world? That's an obvious yes. And I think we've got plenty of evidence to suggest that. And I'm only more confident on that point.
Yeah. And what are you seeing in your portfolio of founders? Are you seeing them, are they making the move to the US? Are they seeing it just as a big market to tap into? Are they seeing it as their future home?
Look, it's always been our aspiration to back people who think globally anyway, right? We invest in Europe. In the earliest stages of a company, we want to be in the office, on the doorstep, going for lunch, meeting with the founders all the time, because I think that relationship's really important. But if you speak to sort of Alex Kendall from Wave or Nikolai at Revolut, or, we used to have the CEO of Darktrace, who's now the Minister for Investment of Britain, but Poppy, they're British, they're building British companies, they consider themselves to have big teams here, but they're global anyway, right? May from Writer, yes, her family's here in London. She lives on a plane, right? And the reality is, to build in many categories, to build like a global champion, you have to think globally from day one anyway. So anyone who's like, I want to build the British winner and I'm going to stay in Britain, it's probably the wrong attitude. Maybe not in just one area of fintech or one area of life sciences, but it's probably the wrong attitude anyway. And I think there's this weird thing where often we get a bit of like national pettyism trumping global ambition. I want to see global ambition. It's good for Britain. It's good for everyone. And saying like, oh, is this person British? Are they staying in Britain? Are they building their team here? Or is this person French? Are they staying in France? Are they building their team here? Sort of misses the bigger picture, which is, if you want to build a big business from anywhere, it's global from day one. Yeah.
And so to push you on that, do you think it matters, companies like Oxford Ionics being acquired by a US company, Deliveroo being taken private, Wise moving, does it matter that they end up in the US? Do you see like negative implications for the UK tech ecosystem when we lose our scale ups to the US?
Yeah, so look, I've been investing for like 15 years in venture, and that's actually not a long time in venture, but hundreds of investments and term sheets and companies grown and exited and sold and failed. And the narrative's gone like this. In 2010, Europe has no tech companies. In 2015, we've got loads of tech companies, but got no money. In 2020, we've got loads of tech companies and they've got loads of money, but they're not worth the valuations and they'll never exit. 2025, you're like companies raising billions of dollars, companies selling billions of dollars in secondary, companies listing for billions of dollars, companies exiting in M&A for billions of dollars. And the narrative is, oh, this is bad. Why aren't you building $100 billion companies? And in 2030, when we have 3 or 4 $100 billion software businesses, they're going to say, why don't you have $1 trillion companies, right? I mean, this is part of building an ecosystem. You can't do it overnight. It needs capital, talent, recycling that capital, proof points to later stage investors and more risk-averse investors that this can work. This is a 30-year build process we're in around the software community in Europe, where, let's be honest, the Silicon Valley had a head start for many good reasons and sort of historical reasons. And to some extent, in some areas, we're playing catch up. In some areas, we're way ahead. But anyone who's like, another $1 billion exit is a failure for Britain, trust me, 10 years ago, oh my God, we would have been praying for $1 billion exits. So it's great to see. I welcome it.
And do you think it's a bit of like the British mindset that we sort of we're a bit overly negative, pessimistic, that we kind of bring ourselves down a bit? Because I think you're right. European and UK venture has taken off. We are building some of the leading companies in the world. And when you talk about the 100 billion businesses, I completely agree. I think like Revolut is way up there, almost certainly going to be one of the next $100 billion companies in the world. So yeah, do you think it's us and the mindset that we are inherently negative compared to like our American counterparts?
Yeah, no, so not at all. I actually kind of get offended when people say it, because there are countless examples of brilliant Brits, Irish, French, German, Swedish founders building like $100 billion, even $1 trillion businesses. Look at the CEOs and founders of some of the most successful software companies in the world over the last 20 years, right? They come from everywhere, right? If you look at the unicorn founders list in America, half of those people were not born in America, right? So to say British entrepreneurs aren't ambitious is incredibly insulting. It's wrong, like factually wrong, and also insulting. The real question is, can you, build a big British winner where a lot of your engineers, marketers, salespeople, and customers are based in the UK? Certainly not customers, right? You have to have global customer base. Certainly not talent. You want to have global talent. You want to have the best people from everywhere. But can you build a business where you predominantly reside in the UK and grow? And that is a harder question, because there is a tax on people staying in Britain on ambition. I don't mean like there is a monetary tax for sure, but I mean tax in its broader sense. There's a cost to it, right? Some of that is cultural for sure. Some of that is regulatory. Some of that is actual monetary punishments for scaling a company in the UK, like the limits on the EMI scheme, stamp duty on shares. Like these are taxes on people building successful companies, which grow as you scale. So there are some hard restraints on building businesses here in Britain. There is zero, in my view, lack of ambition, grind, hustle, or talent amongst the British population or people who've come to Britain to build. That is not a problem. And I worry that often we get those two things a little bit confused. On that, I'd love to just jump in there. It's maybe perfect timing. James, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the current 996 debate that was brought up by Harry Stebbings on Twitter the other day. And we've also seen Saranga made some comments that were featured in Fortune. Do you have a take? Do you have any thoughts? I got lots of thoughts. So look, I think the 996 article was Martin Mignot initially making the point around sort of working hours in different cultures in America and China in particular. And then I think Harry Stebbings said you have to work 7 days a week. And, Harry's content creator, and I get why sometimes he'll say things purposely provocatively. Our view as a fund has always been that the best founders I've worked with, I think they're much more like athletes, and we think of them more like athletes here at Boulderton. And Usain Bolt doesn't run a PB every time he goes out to sprint his 100 meters, right? The best athletes in the world, I don't think, Serena Williams would have played a lot of tennis, but I don't think she plays every single game until exhaustion. And she doesn't play, 24/7, 7 days a week. I think there's like an element of balance that you need. And you need it for yourself. And that's a mental balance. It's a physical balance. Right? You need time to work out. You need time to rest. You need time with your family and friends, right? It's just like this idea that you're working 24/7 is completely wrong. And it's also not a fair representation of what happens in China and America either. And also, like, you will not get great talent if you say to them, we are only here to work. Look, the conversions officers worked incredibly hard. It was like insane the hours you were working. But it wasn't just like you must be in the office at 7 a.m. and you can't leave till 9 p.m., right? People traveled, people were fluid on their working hours. Some people are night owls and work late into the night, start later in the morning, vice versa. Some people have responsibilities with kids, some people have responsibilities with family. And I think it's hard because, when you say something online, it's hard to have nuance. But I do worry that the simplification of, you don't work hard enough if you're not in the office every single day of the week is factually wrong. And I worry that it doesn't bring out the best in founders and teams in the long run. And so we have something called the Well-Founded program here at Boulderton, which is directed at our founders, but we're trying to expand it to more employees in our portfolio companies to make sure when they need it, they can get, health advice and get mental health advice. They can get nutritional support, because we want them to perform like when they're at the World Cup final, not like every single day under the stress of saying this is like the most important thing you'll do this minute, because that doesn't result, in my view, in brilliant long run sustainable companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it comes down to trust as well, really. It's like flexibility and trust. You mentioned convergence. I think that's what the team installed in us pretty early on. It was just do what you need to do to get the work done and do it however you need to do it.
And the bar was so high and the expectations were so high and you all worked really hard. But, that doesn't mean you must follow what a board member says about you must be in the office, 7 days a week. I mean, if I said that as a board member, I'd expect most of the founders to tell me to get lost, rightly so.
Yeah, do you think that has an implication or an effect on Harry's portfolio founders, if that's what he's expecting?
No. Once again, Harry's a content creator, right? So I wouldn't, I think he wants to create a debate, right? So good for him. And I agree with that. It's good, as we're discussing here, it's a good topic to try and bring nuance out of. I think that what I would hate is for people to read, I know Martin Monnier really well as well. I know, he sort of intended to raise some of these cultural differences. It wasn't like a comment about people not working hard, because obviously they do. And I'm from a family where everyone was like self-employed. People work really, really hard, right? Like this isn't unique to tech founders that people work all the time. I think that the truth though is, and what I'd hate is for this kind of discussion online in small snippets to be read into too much and put people off applying for roles because they're worried that, be in the office 7 days a week, work 996, whatever it is, means you don't have flexibility for other responsibilities you have in your life, like working out, like eating properly, like sleeping properly, like looking after kids or, other dependents. If you signal too much to those people that you can't do that, because it's not true. I'm sure it's not true in any of Index's portfolio, our portfolio, 20VC's portfolio. I'm sure that's not the case. But if you signal that it might be the case, you may lose out on some great people, and it, that's the worst outcome possible for a tech company. Talent is everything.
One of the other things we wanted to touch on was like the overall state of European venture from somebody who's living and breathing it every day. We know Boulderton raised 2 massive rounds last year, over $1 billion. We also saw your recent investment, I think, in Quantum Systems. That's like are they primarily defense?
It's dual use, but they have significant defense contracts.
Is this a deal that you think Boulderton would have done 5 years ago, or has Ukraine just changed the field entirely?
Yeah, so we invest. We've got 3 different routes to investment. One is sort of deep thesis, like first principles investing, and we announced an investment in Proxima Fusion today in the fusion space, and similarly we've done investments along that line. We invest in reaction to changing technologies we hadn't seen, so like breakthroughs in Gen AI. We didn't have a thesis on Gen AI before Transformers models and before GPT-3. Obviously quickly we had to build one, and sometimes we invest because of brilliant founders. The reality with an investment like Quantum Systems is the business provides IRS, intelligence reconnaissance surveillance drones, right? So they can be used to monitor, let's say, an oil rig, or monitor like a high security delivery or something like that. But also they are obviously used right now a lot in a live combat situation in Ukraine to monitor enemy and allied assets moving around, people moving around, everything else. And they use that information to direct decisions, which through its battle management system, which military commanders will make. So obviously there's a heavy defense angle. And in that case, we're responding to something that's changed over the last 2 years, which is a thesis we've had for about 2 years, but we wouldn't have had it 5 years ago. We're responding to it. And that thesis is that, defense expenditure is going to rise significantly. that there's a new way of doing warfare, and drones and unmanned vehicles will be, and as the British sort of recent Strategic Defence Review said, will be sort of the biggest area of change and probably the biggest area of investment for war going forward. I mean, there's this, I think it was Demis at DeepMind saying, look, there's this future where warfare, you've got to imagine the future warfare being 1 million drones versus 1 million drones. And it's a thought exercise, but, directionally, there's a reality to that. And so we responded to that by looking at what kind of companies in Europe and what kinds of teams in Europe can deliver on that promise. And we found, the quantum systems team have been at it for a long time. They're experienced military professionals who have built resilient supply chains, but also building software on top. They ticked a lot of the boxes. The nice thing about being a multi-stage firm like we are now, so we raised $1.3 billion last year for an early and growth strategy, is you can look at all different types of companies. And ultimately we led, a big growth round for quantum systems. How do we met them 5 years ago? I met them first 2 years ago, to be fair. And I really love the founders, but how we met them 5 years ago, I think the reality is we wouldn't have done it. We wouldn't have done it because we wouldn't have had conviction that the spending on the defense side would get there. But now we have high conviction in that, and I have a strong belief in that company actually.
Yeah, they look really cool. Yeah, I saw you talk about it. I think you were like in the field with them, trying out some of their tech, weren't you?
Yeah. And do you know what they use when the drones aren't? This isn't this is public information, so I'm not belying anything. But when the drones aren't in autonomous flight mode, they're controlled with Xbox controllers. And this is like one of the learnings of being in the field in Ukraine is like, what can everyone use? Every single person knows how to use an Xbox controller. So you don't need some sophisticated device. It's like, 40 euros and you've got an Xbox controller that can control these phenomenal intelligence drones.
Well, that's amazing. I never would have, yeah.
Well, I'd seen some of the professional, like drone flying has been like a sport before.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the professional drone flyers have sort of gone back to the front lines and worked with some of the engineers there. And I can't remember the name of the company, we'll have to look it up, but one went on to sort of raise some cash and start building drones. Yeah. And like his background was he was a professional drone flyer.
Yeah, and like first person goggle. I've seen companies doing first person goggles for drones. But the speed, the takeaway from what we're seeing in defense is, well, so one, we try and do dual use, right? So we hope there's peace. Obviously, we want to live in a peaceful world, and quantum systems provides solutions for a peaceful world as well as ones which can be used for defense. So that's, has to be part of our thesis. But the speed of iteration is just rapid, right? The Russian forces have started flying drones on fiber optic cables, which are kilometers long. And they're tiny. It looks like, you look at these fields in Ukraine and they look like they're covered in spider webs because there's so many of these assets being flown, as a response to jamming techniques. And now Ukraine has drones and individuals who cut those fiber optic cables so that the line no longer works. This is happening in the matter of weeks, these iterations. And the procurement cycles, innovation cycles in defense historically have been years, right? So as a result, it's actually a more interesting place to invest as a VC and a better place for an entrepreneur to operate because of these iteration cycles. But look, it's complicated and it's hard. So we're excited about quantum systems, but it wouldn't have happened maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah. And 1 minute left, just to wrap up. What are the 2 or 3 most exciting companies in Balderson's portfolio that you are really excited about that we should be looking at?
I don't have favorites. I'm afraid. Every investment we make, we genuinely believe, and we write in a memo and argue about how this business becomes a $10 billion success story. We've recently announced investments in fields as far as space logistics, as generative AI applications, and now nuclear fusion. So, look, if you're interested in a broad and bullish portfolio, you can look at all of Balderson's companies.
Very political.
You're asking a parent who's his favorite kid.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you. But yeah, we'll keep in touch. And, anytime you want to announce future rounds, future funding, to come.
Yeah.
Sure. It's great you're doing this, guys. We desperately need sort of more, I think, reactive and thoughtful media when it comes to the tech industry. So I look forward to listening in.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
Cheers, James. Bye-bye.
Wow, that was a great conversation.
Yeah, drones, nuclear fusion,
I love that, from 996 debate to the front lines.
Yeah.
Bit of a jump. I didn't know that he'd been like in the field in the UK, obviously.
Yeah, I've seen
around
clips of him, like flying the drones.
That's incredible.
It's like a strange perk of the job of being a VC. Is like, I guess like
Yeah.
trying all the new cool tech.
Yeah, that's insane. With an Xbox controller as well. That's mad. I did not know that.
Yeah, all those years spent like gaming can have real world applications.
This is like Call of Duty, man.
Yeah.
So we've got how many minutes till?
4 minutes. David from
4
Asteroid.
minutes. Yeah, we've got David, and I'm not sure if Joe, his co-founder and CTO, is jumping on as well. I mean, if they do, they're sharing a laptop, I assume. But I've only met David and Joe recently. This was, I think, about a week and a half ago. Akash from Earlybird introed me to them to come down and just talk about some of the GTM stuff we were doing at Convergence. These guys are cracked. Super young, super cracked. They've been through Entrepreneur First before, I think. I'm not sure if it was just David or Joe as well. I'm just trying to check now. And then also YC.
Yeah.
So I think a great conversation to have around the differences between the two. What does that look like?
Building AI agents, browser-based AI agents, focused on more healthcare insurance. But yeah, super interesting experience. Like European founders, gone through Entrepreneur First, then went to YC. They're back in London now building for a bit, but I think then their plan is to move back to San Francisco.
Yeah. And they asked me when I went over and was kind of asking about, what was Convergence's take on this? And we ultimately were always going to stay in London, but I do think they seem pretty keen to get back over to the States.
No, it'll be interesting to see what that pull is, and really interesting to see the difference between growing through Entrepreneur First versus YC. Lots of people talk about the need for like a European YC. It'd be interesting to see their take on it. Is that something that we do need in Europe? Is that something that we could possibly build? Is Entrepreneur First and like a lot of the accelerators that we have, are they plugging that gap already?
Well, it's like Project Europe, I guess, was kind of, people were talking about that being this sort of, is this a YC in London? It's super young focused. It's under 25. I think it's something like 200 founders now, part of like basically the LPs.
Network. Yeah.
You get access to the whole of that. Like that's a big network.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
2 minutes.
I'm just trying to see. I can shoot him a WhatsApp message as well and just see if Joe's joining.
But yeah, they've both got a lot of experience in AI. I think they both studied at UK universities in machine learning, AI kind of stuff.
Their background's insane. I remember when we were speaking, I mean, I'll probably ask them this when they come on, but they were talking about doing their first GTM hire. I'm not sure if they'd done it or they were doing it at the time, or if it's gone through already, but even their go-to-market hire, I think, was just like intensely technical background.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They told me a really cool story. I think like the hire was just trying to basically like, if you think about like Thanos collecting the Infinity Stones, he was just trying to like do a role in each different department, like from an operator's perspective. Again, super young, really, really cool to see.
Yeah, that's the sort of the perfect profile for Entrepreneur First. I think they look out for people who are like experts in their field, and they're like I think they run like a talent incubator almost, right? Because you go with no idea, you go with no business, but you try and find a co-founder, you come with technical expertise, and they try and kind of like tease a business out of you and give you some funding.
Yeah. And like you sometimes you break up.
Yeah.
You break up.
I think it's something like
Antler as well.
Only like 20% or 30% come out of that with businesses.
Really?
So I think it's like a very different model to YC, whether you come in as a business.
That'd be interesting, right? Because you go in, you meet someone, you break up.
Yeah.
You come in the next day, like, what is it? Head down.
I think people have, you like go through co-founders. Like some people have like paired up, broken up, found another person.
And then you see them with another co-founder and it's like, like what could have been?
Awkward. Yeah. So very different model, but it'd be interesting to hear that comparison.
I'm pumped to get into that. I don't think I've met anyone that's been through both. Oh, wait, we have him coming in now?
He's not here yet. But yeah, it's a different model, but I think it's Matt Clifford and I think his name Alice set up Entrepreneur First maybe 10 years ago now, and they backed some big winners. I think Clio AI is one of them.
Yeah, that's like their front runner. I think.
Yeah.
That's like their big dog.
Hello.
Have we got David in?
Hey guys, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yeah,
Yeah, I can
we can
hear
hear you loud and clear. We're going to do a little tilt and show. I'm also here. We're having some problems with our laptop, so we're doing like a double.
Hello, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's great to be here. Congratulations again, to starting this.
No, thank you very much. We're super excited by it.
We are pumped.
You're our fourth guest. We've had Philip from Zilch. We had Danai who's building like another AI agent software, but in the fintech space. We just had James Wise from Balderton. So yeah, it's great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, just building agents all day and, patching every mistake that you can possibly make.
We were just giving an introduction to kind of like your background, your journey, but give us like the 1 minute pitch about Asteroid.
Yeah, awesome. So at Asteroid, we are building browser agents that can automate complex tasks in healthcare, insurance, or any other enterprises. So think of all the annoying tasks that should have never existed. The B2B SaaS bullshit when you need to go and fill out this portal, move data from to the spreadsheet to another one. And they have no APIs, usually these systems. So now our browser agents can automate all that work. And instead of one employee doing that work, you will have thousands and millions of agents. And you don't have to interact with those systems. You'll only interface with Asteroid, which behind the scenes is able to connect and automate work of millions of people.
And where are you on your journey? How's it going?
Yeah, we started in October in London. We are at pre-seed stage. We did Entrepreneur First in London. Then we did YC in the US. We raised money around Demo Day, which was 2 months ago. We just hired our 2 first founding engineers. So it's 4 of us. We're going to have 2 interns over summer. We have customers, and now we are growing and scaling.
Nice, amazing.
Wow, that is like super quick traction.
Yeah, and we were just talking, you've got like a really interesting, unique insight of having been through Entrepreneur First and then YC. How do the two compare?
Yeah, those are similar, but I would say only like 60%. Like both will EF and YC. The goal is to accelerate the company, find customers, figure out what you're doing, fundraise, and all of that. But the main distinction, I think, is that at EF, you're supposed to find a co-founder. So it's an earlier stage investor than YC. And they're also taking more risks because of this. So you join EF to find a co-founder. They'll help. There's a cohort like 70 people. They try to match you. After you find the right person, then you start growing and scaling. To put it in contrast with YC, when you're applying for YC, you already have the idea. You already have a co-founder. And usually you already have some working MVP type of product. Some companies even apply to YC when they're like 2 years old, 100K ARR, and then YC is helping them accelerate. Whereas EF is mostly trying to form the team. And I can dig into details.
I'd love to hear about the YC application. Like, what did that look like? Walk us through that.
Yeah, YC application is a form. You fill out a form, 15 questions. You should honestly just follow the advice that YC gives you. Be clear, be concise, say why you. Be honest where you are. It's fine if you don't have much. And we just submitted the application. Last day, it was like 2 hours before the deadline, as usual. We got an interview. Interview is 10 to 15 minutes. Ours was like 15 minutes. They ask you questions about, the traction. They usually try to de-risk, like the partners have seen millions of companies, right? And they identify what are the probably like 3 main risks. And then they start digging deep into those. So like, for example, one of ours was connected to EF, right? Like I met my co-founder with EF, so the co-founder relationship might not be as solid. And 30% of companies fail because of this suicide, because, co-founder breakup. So I think what we did really well during the interview was to be very, like, I would say personal. Like we were not trying to fake it. I even made jokes and like I said the good things about Joe, my co-founder who's amazing, and, bad things about him. And it was like, I think came across really well. So that was, and then we got in after the first interview. It's kind of funny if you think about it. You have a 10-minute call and then they give you $500,000.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's a super profitable 10 minutes. What did it look like going out? How, walk us through, like you get there day one, you have a cohort. How does that look? And I think you have a mentor as well.
Yeah, so you have the main partner who is, experienced ex-YC founder who usually exited a company. We had Harsh Tagar, who built a few companies before. And that's the main point of contact together with the visiting partner that you usually have. So you have 2 partners and both YC alumni that you meet usually once in 2 weeks or once a week or anytime you actually need. They connect you to Slack and then you have these partner meetings. you get accepted, for example, like in December, and the cohort starts in January. So you have like 1 month to actually prepare, get your visa sorted, all this, and then you move to San Francisco. The whole cohort is in person. You have these weekly meetings. There are a lot of YC alumni events where they invite, Brian Chesky, like Coinbase CEO, like all these people will tell you like honest stories how terrible and terrible and terrible starting a company is.
That's that's nice. Baptism of fire.
Yeah. And so you went through Entrepreneur First in London. You went through YC in San Francisco. You're now back in London, and now you're heading back to the US, right?
Yes.
What's the pull back to the US?
The pull back to the US is customers, American market, obviously bigger, much more like homogenous. San Francisco, very, very specifically because of startups and the talent pool that you have there. The capital that you have, much more accessible in San Francisco due to much more developed VC scene. And especially with AI, also the engineering talent and understanding where we are in this kind of hype is just much, much bigger there. San Francisco is a major bubble, like for good and bad. But if you're young, 25, building a company, bubbles are good.
Cool. That's going to be, it's going to be amazing to keep up with your journey and hear how things are going, like in San Francisco. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So like there are downsides to it as well. Like we need to pay more for companies, like for employees in San Francisco and like compared to London. And I love London and I would love to stay in London, or we were thinking about like having an office eventually here as well, to have engineering function here and maybe go to market function in San Francisco. But I'm a big believer of in-person teams. So not going to happen right now.
Yeah, you're going to have your headquarters out there. What was the vibe or atmosphere like? Was it like a real tangible difference between Entrepreneur First and YC? Or is it similar? It's just like young, ambitious people trying to build something.
It is a bit different. Maybe for context, the scale of it is different. Like YC funds 150 companies every 3 months now. EF funds like 20, 30 companies maybe. So at EF, you usually know almost everyone in the cohort. YC, no, like 10 other companies. YC is much more hands-off. I think the level of talent of people is similar. There are like small differences, but like EF is able to attract incredible talent in Europe and like outside of Europe as well. They're based in India and US now as well. YC is obviously able to attract talent from all over the place. I think YC is a bit more skewed about for more technical people, whereas EF also index a lot on commercial people, because ideally you want to have CTO who is kind of technical, someone commercial who is going to be usually the CEO, but sometimes you can have a very technical team who are going to build like 2 technical people starting a company, which was the case for us.
And how did you find that co-founder matchup? So you met each other at Entrepreneur First. Was that like organic? Was it like, how did it go?
Yeah, were there any breakups as well?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work there?
There are so many breakups. There's so much drama. Or it's like a Love Island. It's like this one is speaking to this one, and
This should be televised.
Yeah.
No?
I think they actually got offers to do that. I think someone told me that EF has been approached almost like every year by some, like studio to like, can we go and record and like then do these, reality show like in these little meeting rooms, and they're like, they'll kill us. They would kill EF,
It'd be good TV though.
Dude,
I definitely would watch that.
I'd watch that. That's great distribution. That's more applications, probably some revenue streams.
It's honestly, I loved it. Like I loved the intensity and like being able to like test relationships and like see like how do I perform with this person, and like you also it's a possibility of learn how other people operate. Like there is no other environment I think like in the world where it's like so much celebrated to try working really, really hard with like a person for 5 days and then never see them again.
What does a breakup look like? Is this like, do you text? Do you go up in person? Like, do you ask to meet for a coffee?
Do you usually break up over text?
Not me. No.
Yeah, well, I've done it before. It wasn't great. So I usually try to do it in person. So like I think usually you see it coming. You go and meet and you talk about, okay, this is what's working, this is not working. You give feedback and then you break up. Then specifically at EF, you send a Slack message to everyone in the cohort to notify them that like you broke up with this person, but you need to say something nice. You need to say, we are breaking out because we don't like the idea, and like I want to do B2B SaaS AI agents for insurance, and they want to build robots. Doesn't work, but the person is amazing, is the smartest people I know. So please go and talk to the person because they're now on the market.
Yeah, is that your way of being like, I'm single, I'm hot, like someone come hit me up, we can build something.
Exactly. And then like you go and like poach other teams like, hey, come, like I'm better than you, than your current co-founder.
That sounds like a cool dynamic. I was going to ask as well. So you mentioned you've hired 2 founding engineers. When I was in your offices the other week, or when I met you in Joe for the first time, you mentioned we discussed early hiring and we discussed like go to market as well. I'd love to know 2 things. One, how does the YC badge affect your early stage hiring process? I guess to start.
Interesting one. I think the YC general advice is like don't hire unless you have to and you're dying and like you really need to hire. So I think a lot of early startups like try to like hire for the sake of hiring. So it's like that's why we try to defer like hiring. We only hired like 7 months in, and like because we were both technical, I had to help, but it was impossible to do like go to market and building at the same time. So YC helps you to kind of like postponing as much as possible until you like, yes, now is the time. And then we started hiring, and we were actually having a chat with Harsh, our partner, about who should we hire. And we had this idea in our head that we need a specialist in AI. We need this specific persona, maybe like machine learning engineer before, forward deploying engineer in our agent company, ideally, past founding engineer, because we were hiring for founding engineer. He was like, guys, simplify it. Like find someone who is incredible engineer, more generalist, and whatever happens with the company, they'll be kind of there. So we simplified much more and like went with our personal networks, which was much better because we had people that we knew from before, and specifically the founding engineers that we hired, and they're incredible. Were working before with Joe, the CTO, my co-founder. So that really helped us, and I think they also de-risked from their side, because they knew, okay, they're a VC company, they raised some money. So this is not just a weekend project with Joe, like this is a serious effort, and like we'll do it for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, insane. And then my follow-up to that was just going back to this, you're building the team in London at the moment. What was the transition from SF back to London? Like you guys mentioned when I spoke with you that there was a change, like you felt not exhausted, but you felt like, oh, we've just stepped out of something very unique. Like, could you walk us through that and what that felt like?
Yeah, it's like you're in this bubble that you burst, and then you walk the street of San Francisco. I go for a run and I hear people speaking about AGI, and it's like that's like everyone is AGI pill, and like this is happening. It's going to be in 2 years. It's going to change the world. You go for a run in London, and people are like drinking beer 2 p.m. because the sun is out, which is like I love beer. I love drinking beer outside at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, but like we need to be able to kind of create our bubbles of intensity in London, which I think some, like Entrepreneur First is doing like great on that front, like Project Europe and like all this. So like I'm so much in favor of that. And I would love to have like more European companies popping up. But for us, yeah, specifically, it was like we just like lost that other, like we have to build our own intensity, which we are, I think, quite good at. But we were missing this like push from everyone else, by the community and like everyone. It's like in the end of the day, you're alone in your office.
Yeah. And a lot of YC founders talk about the network effect of being that YC cohort. Is that something that you felt, and is that something that you're going to be able to tap back into when you move back?
Yeah, definitely. So during YC, you have a small circle of companies that you meet every 2 weeks, and you set a KPIs like in 2 weeks, I'm going to grow by 10%. And if I don't grow by 10%, please slap me in my face, right? This ends with the badge. But for example, in our circle, in our like section, they continue doing this, but only in person in San Francisco. So yes, right now we're missing out. Like this is a little thing, but it's like a combination of these little things. And we try to emulate a bit of like YC vibe here in London. So it's like there's a YC London WhatsApp group, and like some people meet, but London is huge. If it's going to take me 35 minutes to go and meet someone, I'm not going to go and meet them.
Yeah, that's fair. How many of those YC founders are in London? Was there a big cohort of like London European people who are out there?
Yeah, 100%. So London, I think, was one of the biggest, like outside of US cohort of companies. So for reference, there was 160 companies, and I think around 20 to 30% were like European founders, and maybe 5 to 10 companies out of that cohort were just like London based. Like Paul Graham asked in one event, like, who is from London or who is from UK? A lot of people raised their hands, and a lot of them moved back to London. So it's like there is a big group of founders who want to stay in London, but Vice is trying to convince them to actually go to San Francisco. Vice is very direct about like, you should be in
You
SF.
need to stay here. And I thought like EF was similar. I thought their model was changing slightly so that to get the funding, you've got to commit to moving. Is that right?
Yeah, this started last year, where the first 3 months of the program, you do London, Paris, or Bangalore. But for the next 3 months, that is preparing you to launch, to fundraise, you'll move to San Francisco. Mainly because of, you have better access to capital, you can raise on higher caps, you can attract more talent. So I think EF is now moving more towards the model, find the best founders in the world, get them started, and then move them to San Francisco.
Yeah, it's where the US market is an essential market to grow and tap into.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, we are 1 minute over. David, we have to love you and leave you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yep, of course. Thank you guys for the invitation, and good luck.
Cheers.
Yeah, we'll be watching along.
We'll have you back on.
Cheers, David.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Cheers.
David. Ciao. Awesome stuff. I'm just messaging Dan.
Yes, I think it's interesting. The EF model has shifted to being.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that they have to go to SF?
I think if you raise money for them, I don't know how they can enforce it, but I think it's sort of like implied that if you go through the program, you raise money from us, you then go to San Francisco to like do the next thing and launch out there.
Is that like, go there for 3 months? Go there for...
I think the idea is you go there with the intention of staying
indefinitely.
Yeah, I think so.
Crazy.
So I think that's like part of the thing that you sign up to now is you go through EF, you find your co-founder, you get funding, and then you go to the US.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd see that as like a possible barrier to entry for them, right? Like, would that not mess up?
Some people might be put off by it. And I wonder how much, we talked about Clio being a UK startup that went through Entrepreneur First.
They can operate basically out of...
100% of their customers are in the US.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have their product in the UK anymore. I wonder how much having a huge portfolio business like that, who's seen all of their success come from the US, has influenced them. But yeah, it's interesting.
No, that's surprising. I didn't know. It's cool to hear that there's at least like a high representation of UK, London-based founders out there in YC as well.
Yeah, it's the same as James is saying. Like San Francisco is just the hub and the pull where all the best founders in the world go to, and there's a lot of European founders out there.
Yeah, no, it's funny to hear the breakup stories of EF as well. I didn't know
the drama. There must be such drama.
I would genuinely watch
gossip.
that if that was a TV show.
Yeah, of course.
I would tune in if that was on Netflix. I'd tune in every day. I'd binge that.
The Love Island of tech.
Yeah, I'd binge the hell out of that.
Yeah,
absolutely binge it. We've got up next. We've got Dan Jones, a good friend of mine, joining in a few minutes.
He's running at 25 past, I think.
25. Oh, I thought it was 20 past. Oh, good stuff.
But yeah, he's like a big ecosystem player here in London, right? He was one of the founders of Embark.
Yeah. So Dan founded Embark with two of the guys. This is a while ago now. Well, like a while ago in our world, like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He founded Embark. It was like a community for future founders, basically. So it started with like 6 people in a pub. I was there for the first one. Nice. It was really humble. It was really nice. And from there, he went on to scale it to like 1,000 members or something like that. Yeah. They were doing partnerships with Google. Most of the VC companies in London, we'd host an event there, bring people in, and then the VCs would kind of use it as like deal flow, just to keep an ear to the floor of what's going on in London at the moment.
Try and find young, cool London founders.
Yeah, basically. It was initially focused like founders, associates, chief of staff. It's like who's most likely to go on to raise, or like who's most likely to go on and found.
Do their own thing, yeah.
Which is weird though, because now, with the problem that I worked with Dan on Embark for about 8 months in like a growth sort of function. One of the biggest problems we had was like technical talent. It's like, wow, like the split must have been genuinely something like 80-20.
What, of like commercial versus technical?
Yeah.
So like we do generalist.
Yeah, basically. And it's like, it's really tough to manage. I know like loads of communities out there at the moment, operators and friends, they're kind of just like they've absolutely smashed the model to
Yeah,
pieces. They're doing insanely well, Johanna and team, and also Early Builders. I know Baptiste there who runs that in France. It's a problem that they all have, I think. But what's weird is that now we're seeing this like, you know, hard tech manufacturing, agentic sort of stuff. It's like these technical talents now. Like, I think there'll be more of them. There'll be more competition for them, but there's definitely going to be more.
And I've actually heard that as well at Entrepreneur First. I think they try and do it to 2-to-1 ratio in the cohort. I think it's something like that, so that you have more technical than commercial, because everybody wants a technical co-founder. I think like with Asteroid, they're both technical co-founders, and so you go into it as a commercial generalist.
And you just have a field there.
You're like desperate to get the best technical founders, trying to convince them that you can add more value than another technical co-founder.
Yeah, I think if it was the other way around, it'd just be too much for like technical people just getting chased around by ideas guys with like lovable dashboards.
Yeah. Please,
hey, look what I built.
Build my app.
Build my app. I'll give you no money, but I'll give you 50% equity. That's worth nothing.
So and Dan's been he left Embark. He's building his own.
Yeah. So Dan, well, that's actually when he passed me, Embark, and two others, two brilliant operators that I ran it for 8 months alongside Pigment, just sort of like in a spare time, you know. And then he went on to found Medfin, which he'll be discussing today. So, and this is a really interesting one, right? Like me and him were speaking about this the other day. Dan's network is insane in London, purely because he was founder of Embark. It was a networking community. Like his job was to be the guy who networks. Like
to know everyone.
Know everyone, right? And he introduced me to like 3 people the other day just on Gmail without a heads up. And like, they're all amazing people. So yeah, he's got an amazing network in a particular, well, I guess it's more like a general space in a sense. Like he just got his finger in a lot of pies, but he's gone into a space. I mean, it's the dentist space. It's like he's working with dentists.
Yeah.
He has no background in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
So really keen to jump into like how does he approach breaking into that from no background whatsoever? And like how what's the buy-in from the VCs from that perspective, right? You look at the founding team, you kind of want some background in the space, right?
But it ties in with a lot of the YC advice, which is start niche. You know, like nail a very small market and then try and expand and go broad. So it'd be interesting to see like how he found the problem that he's solving within dentistry. It's a really niche market. How do you understand that problem? How do you then figure out how to solve it?
Yeah, well, I think they're pre-seed, so I'm sure there's been some pivoting like any pre-seed company does. It's a bet on the team usually, so maybe we can dig into that. I'm not 100% sure.
It'll also be interesting to see how much his networking community have helped him raise. You know, him knowing every VC in London.
That's a great point.
Like how many doors did that open when he decided to be like, hey, by the way, I'm now raising my round. Shall we catch up?
Yeah.
And people can immediately be like, well, I don't know the business. I don't know the product, but
I know Dan's a great guy.
Dan's a great
I
guy.
know the team's a great guy.
Yeah. Take my money, Dan. So it'd be interesting to see, to hear that, like that, you know, fundraising is meant to be really, really tough, especially early stages.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see, especially without a technical background, how much his network has helped him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So he'll talk to this more. I know that the raise isn't public yet.
Yeah.
But I think he'll probably want to discuss it a bit. And the journey so far, I'm not sure exactly how long they've been at it. It's been a couple months. Maybe work out how the team's getting on, and what his area of focus is right now. But I think this surface area of luck thing is something that he holds like quite close to his chest. I think that we can definitely bring that up and like, you know, how did the Embark community play a role in your raise? How did this look going forward? So super keen to jump into that. We've got a minute left. He should be joining anytime now. He's just pinged me on WhatsApp. Yeah, all good.
He seems like super early, right? That's gonna be really interesting. Is like
super early.
First couple of months, how's it going? How's the raise?
Yeah.
What's it like in London raising right now?
That's going to be awesome chat.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Hey guys, how's it going? I can indeed. How are things?
Dan the man is in the house. We're going to turn it. Hello, how are we?
Good. Good to see you. Inaugural one. Looking forward to this.
Mate, welcome. EP1. You're live in the studio with us today. We've had a pretty stellar lineup. Obviously, we're saving the best till last. We're pumped to get into some discussions. I know we were going back and forth last night over a few topics and stuff, what you guys have got top of mind at the moment, but jumping into it, how are we? What's going on?
All good, busy. We're rolling out with Medfin across practices in the UK, so busy but the good sort.
I'd love to hear it. So can you give us, I guess, a breakdown of what's the core focus for Medfin right now? And how we were riffing just now before you jumped on the Embark story, the Medfin, that turned into the Medfin story. Can we start from beginning? Let's go to like Embark. What did that look like going into Medfin from there? How did we start Embark? What did that journey look like?
Sure. Should I touch on sort of what we're building at Medfin first, and then we can go back to... Awesome. So at Medfin, we're building the universal financial intelligence layer for healthcare. So the key problem really is that today healthcare spending is on a fundamentally unsustainable path, and providers urgently need clear, actionable, and reliable data to understand how they can better allocate resources. But today, no one has this. So if you go into a hospital, for example, in the UK, and say, how much does it cost you on average to fix a broken leg? They wouldn't be able to give you an answer to that. And it's the same everywhere across healthcare. So in dentistry, for example, practices typically have no visibility into their net margins or basic KPIs. And this chronic lack of financial clarity prevents any sort of meaningful improvement in terms of how healthcare systems use resources. The reason why this problem exists is that healthcare data or data within healthcare systems is fundamentally fragmented. You've got clinical data locked up in the electronic health record or PMS if you're in dentistry. You've got financial data living in a range of systems like Xero, QuickBooks. You've got transaction data in banks. And then you've also got invoices, which is like paper, email, fax, even sometimes. And so stitching all this stuff together is one, super complex, two, super cumbersome. And when you're doing it quite manually, it just leads to loads of mistakes, and it's kind of like crap in, crap out in terms of the data. So providers have a big problem, and existing tools like FP&A and ERP tools, you can't use them in healthcare because of how specific healthcare's finances and needs are. So this is really where Medfin comes in as a platform. We are building that layer to bring in all these scattered data sources into a unified platform and automatically surface all these KPIs and all this data. No manual work required for healthcare providers, so that they get the information that they need. And here AI is like the big unlock, taking all this scattered data, processing it, structuring it. So we're using AI to do that. We're starting in dentistry, but the same problem exists, as I say, everywhere. And our goal is to become the essential financial infrastructure underpinning healthcare globally. So we can see some real positive change in our healthcare systems.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, first question, why go straight into dentistry? And also, what is it like going into an industry with, I guess you're kind of starting from scratch in terms of prior knowledge or prior understanding, or what does that look like?
For sure. It's difficult. I think we were chatting about this the other day, right? Like going from zero or close to zero in terms of connections is just harder. You don't have those people that you can tap on the shoulder and say, hey, do you mind just using this product and giving me feedback in a way that, like, if I was building something for startups, if we know so many people in the startup space, particularly through Embark, I could ring up 20, 30 people and say, hey, could you use my product and give me feedback in that space? And I was going from zero in healthcare and dentistry. Why dentistry? It's the most sort of entrepreneurial sector for healthcare in the UK. I think it's like where you can get stuff done quickly. I think it's also, there's great people in the dentistry sector. And yeah, I got into healthcare more generally through some like previous experiences I had as a patient in the healthcare system, which I can touch on in a minute.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned there the Embark, like how you weren't able to leverage Embark, right? You can't just call up I don't know how many dentists there are in Embark. I'm going to guess 0, maybe 1. I'm not sure. You might know better than me. But it's interesting you say that, right? Because when I was at Convergence, I would use Embark. I would drop into Embark like, hey, does anyone want to be a design partner or just run through some of the B2C stuff we're doing? We need to test a product. Within 10 minutes, I had like 15 people saying, yeah, I'll jump in, I'll test it. It was a huge unlock for us. So yeah, I guess a testament to just diving in right at the deep end for you guys. The role of Embark, your background, the network you mentioned, how something that you and I sort of riff off all the time is this surface area of luck thing, right? What did that journey look like for you? Like starting Embark, the journey through that, and then how did that play a part in what you're doing today?
Cool. Yeah, big believer in the surface area of luck and the power of community also as an unlock in basically everything. product testing, go to market. But yeah, we can talk a bit about that in a minute. In terms of how Embark started, like I was essentially solving my own pain point in some ways. So I started my career in investment banking, thought that's what I wanted to do, make loads of money in banking, private equity. Got there and I was like, this is definitely not what I want to do for the rest of my life. But all the sort of work and networking, etc., that I'd done up to that point was geared towards that. So when I decided to make the jump into startups, I joined like a pre-seed, at the time was a pre-seed stage fintech called Connect as High Number 3. I had no one that I knew really, or it was like a list. I made a list. It was like 7 people long, and Embark was started off as just bringing people together so I could meet people in the space, and it just like really scaled from there. And I'm very blessed in many ways to have met so many fantastic people in the VC community and the startup community through that.
Yeah, interesting. And then I guess this power of community-led model, we discussed this a lot, right? VCs are bringing out their own communities, startups bringing out their own communities, that people are kind of realizing this forward-facing, founder-first sales, like this forward-facing public sort of persona is, 1, free distribution that you're just owning yourself, but 2, like a great feedback loop. Like, can you talk to us like Medfin, community plans, if that's ever in the works in the future, would that ever be a thing or?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know a couple of people that are sort of pursuing what I would call like a community-led go-to-market motion. So bringing people together, if you serve a certain vertical or a certain persona with an organization, bringing those sort of people together. So maybe you're building a tool for sales engineers, like building a community for sales engineers. I think it's incredibly powerful. And I think, as time goes on, like AI becomes more powerful and better. Actually, we crave more and more as humans that like genuine connection and authenticity. And you get that in the best communities. Like, I think that's something that I experienced firsthand at Embark. Like, it's not just a networking event where you come and there's like canapes and drinks and you wear like a name tag and it's super stuffy. You meet people that become great friends, and they just happen to be people that you also do business with and can sort of bounce stuff off.
Yeah. Taking a slight turn, we were talking about Lovable earlier. We were talking about Lovable, their like prospective raise of 1.5 billion valuation, 100 million raise. You and I were also talking about Lovable, and I mentioned a conversation that we had the other day. Like, how is that playing a role for you as like a non-technical founder? Your focus is like you're CEO of the business, right? You have Matt, co-founder, CTO. Lovable playing a part in your day-to-day? What is it? You mentioned that sometimes you'd ping Matt at 3 a.m. with a mock-up and a dashboard saying, hey, dude, like, let's run this. Can you maybe just touch on that a little bit and just talk us through how that's like playing a part in your role as a founder and CEO at a pre-seed startup?
For sure. I think Matt rues the day that Lovable was invented, because he gets late night slacks from me with Lovable products being like, what do you think of this? We could build it like this. I think the crucial unlock with a tool like Lovable, there's others out there like Replit, is that it allows someone like myself that is, pretty much non-technical, but who holds the product vision in their head to like manifest that on the screen in a way that was difficult to do before. Obviously you could do it with Figma, but you also had to be pretty good at Figma, right? Like, it wasn't, you had to spend time on it. And to be able to spin stuff up quickly when you're working through like product ideas, feature ideas, that's where I find it most useful. Now, we're obviously not using Lovable stuff in deployment, especially considering what we're building. We need it to be more robust than tools like that can build it today. But for the product iteration, like it's super valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I guess what you're building today, I mean, state of play today, where are we at? Where are we looking to be? What's the current state? What's the plan?
For sure. I mean, end goal is obviously world domination, but before then, we've raised the 1.5 million pre-seeds back the end of last year. Thank you. More details to come on that over the next few months. We are rolling out in dentistry. So we're starting in dentistry. As I mentioned, we're rolling out in dental practices across the UK at the moment. We're in or setting up in over 20 practices. And we're looking to multiply that number quite a lot by the end of the year. So yeah, watch this space.
Insane.
Can I ask, what's that go-to-market like? Like dentistry is kind of niche. It's not your classic like B2B sales.
For sure. I think dentistry is similar in many ways to healthcare, and it's a huge market. It's like 10 billion pounds a year in the UK, but it's in many ways it's also incredibly small. So everyone knows each other. So I would hop on a call with one prominent dentist that I'd reached out to, managed to get an intro to. And then the week after, I'd speak to someone else completely unrelated, and that person that I spoke to after would be like, "Oh, I heard you spoke to so and so. How was that conversation?" I'd be like, "How do you know that?" And it's really interconnected. They congregate in sort of like Facebook groups, conferences. Like it's very traditional in that sense. And so we're really employing what I call like a network-based go-to-market. The word of mouth in healthcare and dentistry specifically is so powerful. I think we have one clinic that we're working with that came through cold outbound. The rest was kind of like referrals or warm network, or someone introduced us to someone. So we're really putting emphasis on that.
Speaking of
working
referrals,
out ways to sort of hack that.
Speaking of referrals, we discussed a lot today about this. We had David. He went through the YC cohort, founder of Asteroid, on just before you, and we were talking about early stage hiring, how that looks like. He's kind of started off, it's very referral network based early on. Would love to get your thoughts on what that looks like. How are you approaching that? Do you have plans to sort of like ramp up some sort of, you're gonna have people in the field selling stuff for you? Like you're gonna have these people out there like doing this networking for you, or what does it look like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to date and for the foreseeable, that person out in the field driving to see dentists, spending time at events is going to be me. I think that's important. But for your go-to-market motion, by having the founder being there on the front line, so to speak. In terms of hiring, completely agree on the network and referral-based stuff. We can hire from network. We absolutely prefer to do that. I mean, the contract's out for founder associate today, and we got that through just posting on LinkedIn. No pay. We didn't pay anyone for anything. We don't use recruiters. And I think the power of hiring people, like people or people like in your broader network, is that you can talk to people about them. You can say, how do you find this guy? Personal life, work life. How is it like working with her at XYZ startup? And hearing it from people is just so much more powerful if you can reference people. I did 4 reference calls for the person we're hiring for the founder associate role. So I think it's super powerful. When you scale, it's harder, right? But the first 10 hires is so important in a startup's trajectory. It's worth doing like deep due diligence, and network allows you to do deep due diligence than if they come through a recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 3 early stage founders on today. Every single one has now said all the hires in the early days come from your network. And it just goes to show the power of the communities like Embark, that if you want to get recruited into an early stage startup, you've got to be out there meeting people, making impressions, getting your brand out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're coming to the end of time. I guess one final question is, what's top of mind right now today for Medfin?
Good question. I think it's now that we're bringing on quite a lot of practices. We're really looking at how we can structure properly our product function and bring in all this feedback from all the practices that we have using the platform. They're all saying slightly different things. They all want slightly different features, and really coming up with a systemized way to ingest that and reflect that in our product roadmap. That's something that we're doing a lot of thinking about, because I think early days you do it a bit more ad hoc, and we're now graduating onto that more structured approach.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, look, that's time for the day, man. Thanks for dropping in. We need to get you back on as well. There sounds like there's another announcement coming in a few months.
Maybe. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Awesome. That is everyone for the day.
5 for 5.
That was a good first step up to home plate, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting the themes that you start to see across the different founders.
Yeah, wow.
Like very bullish, very optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, load of overlaps there.
Yeah. UK talent is here. Hire from your network. Cool.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that's the show.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us for our first episode. We're going to be doing this every week for the next 2 weeks. And then from July 2nd, this is going to be transformed into a live show. So we will be doing this live. And so, yeah, we look forward to seeing you there.